It's been a while since I've written anything related to the Disney Corporation, and I'm sure you can understand why. A lot has been going on since my last post. I've received a lot of questions and concerns from folks who read my first-hand account of Maui's Palace, a resort that was built and abandoned by Disney. I want to thank everyone who mirrored my post and has been taken down from a few places. Mostly corporate state that were easily learned on by a larger power. However, for every new topic or disappearing blog post, it seems like 100 more have popped up. This is something they have to face. There's no turning back from them. None for me either. I'm definitely being followed. For the first month or two, I choke it up to paranoia. Any casual glance or half smile in my directions send me off. Hair standing on the back of a neck and everything. The first one, or rather, the first one I was actually able to spot was a telephone worker mailing around my apartment complex. He was middle-aged, dopely dressed, just like you expected, but something just seems off about him. I couldn't place it, but I knew this wasn't just my imagination acting up. He was awkward and out of place, but somebody who's not was comfortable doing his routine job. I followed him around a corner, only to lose him there. When I turned back to go home, there he was, standing directly at me, about 10 feet behind me, expressionless and cold. Exploring? He asked. That was all he said, and there was an accusing tone of his voice. Tell me what blue-collar phone jockey does that. I guess that's the worst part. Never feeling safe, never feeling alone. That, and the occasional Disney merchandise left somewhere for me to find. Little rubber Mickey in the mailbox, a little Disney Adventures magazines on my bookshelves. They hide little Mickeys everywhere. 3 circles, 1 big, 2 small. In a silhouette of the famous mouse head. I've started keeping a running list of Mickeys I found. Coffee cups, rings on my coffee table, 1 big, 2 small. Color glass bottles left on the doorstep, viewed from the top down, all red. Graffiti on the wall. On my way to work, a huge earth, small sun and moon in the proper locations. They're everywhere. People have mailed me about this as well. If you expect anything or repost anything I have to say, you're going to start finding these son of a bitches online or outlines. I guarantee it. The best one by far that actually made it laugh because of the horror of it all was a drowning in choke next to my car. I was taken aback at first, walking through the parking garage, keeping an eye out for people following me. The outline seems a perfect match for, well, a murder victim. You're probably familiar with it. You read my past post. Written in yellow paint, I'm sure, was a single word. Retract. The only thing that's come out of all this is that I know I'm not the only one who's seen something they shouldn't have. I'm not going to give their names because, well, if I have, to tell you why, you haven't been paying attention. Researchers. Goes to Disney parks whenever he can, all throughout the year. He's not going to have fun, enjoy rides, etc. He's looking for the gas cons. There's been a long tradition, apparently, of people reporting strange patrons throughout the park, silent, motionless, staring patrons of every age, shape, and size. Men and women, adults, children, and teens, all wearing Disney-themed gas masks. Way back then, Disney would get a tons of complaints about oddly dressed folks dressing others around the park, folks who would then emerge into crowds and disappeared. Later on, the gas mask caused folks to draw other conclusions, and reports of possible terrorists and bombers started following. All of those reporters most likely went straight into the trash can. I know I can't find any sign of any such occasions reported on by the media. Although you should be aware of the fact Disney can pretty much control its press like no other. Researcher goes to the park, talks to the few people, and tries not to draw any attention to himself. He would just ask 3 or 4 families if they seen his friend who was wearing a funny mask. He has yet to see a mascot for himself, though on one occasion a child pointed him towards Frontier Town. As he raced through the crowd, he heard a single voice ahead cry out,
"Mommy, I want a goofy air mask too."
A fellow I call lifeguard working in a Disney water park from 2001 through 2003. He stood at the top of a huge water slide and made sure none of the kids gets too rowdy. He passed the kids through one at a time, telling them over and over again to be safe, keep their arms in, and so on. One day, as he tells it, this fat kid goes down with the tube and doesn't come out the other end. He sent 2 or 3 kids after. The whole thing moves at a steady clip. So naturally, you'll expect that if Fatty got stuck, the kids that follow him were stuck too. Not so. Only the big kids disappeared. Everyone else comes out the other end, cheering and splashing like nothing wrong. Lifeguard shut down the slide, much to the aggravations of the kids waiting before he can go. Though any of the Disney strict producers splash, the fatty already finally comes out. Staff members pull the kid out of the water, and he sank like a stone when he hit. His skin already blue, and his eyes wide. All he would say was,
"No face, kid," and stop squeezing.
The kid was okay, in case you're wondering. He got carted right off to the medical center. When lifeguard was told to open the slide back up, he made a big stink about how it clearly wasn't safe. Despite his complaints, he was threatened with firing and begrudgingly opening the slide again. From that point on, he kept a closer eye on the kid. Only kids, every so often, they come out in the wrong order. Never as stunned as a fat kid, but always with a vague look of concern. A dreamy half of stupor that seemed as they were trying to figure out what is reality. They take on some water and choke a bit. They never come back to up the ride again. I read the emails with some sort of unease you might be feeling right now. I wanted him to share his own story, but in the end, he didn't want to expose himself in that way. I can't say I blame him, Snow White. Much wasn't the actual role as she played, as was a character in the park. She had a nice little tidbit for me. You know what happens when a costume employee dropped dead in his suit? Like 1 second he's taking a picture with little Jimmy, and the next he had a fatal stroke. A second customer mascot in the area has to sit with a corpse on a curb or bench and wait for the designated dry cleaner to arrive and cart the body away in a discreet manner. All the while, patrons have no idea they're sitting with a dead body or photo ops. Feel free to check your photo albums at this point. That was bad. Another fellow, a janitor, went completely off the creepy charts. Disney World and probably other is built with a series and underground tunnels just below your feet. 3 stories worth. Anything and everything you can imagine is down there for use of the employees. They call Uladors, quality corridors. Basically, that's the reason you can't see characters out of places or janitors wandering through the park. They pop in and out of hidden doors and travel at the concealed town you're walking on. Janitor told me that something might be common knowledge, but that was nonetheless news to me. Walt Disney has several apartments built into his parks. There is one above Cinderella's castle. There is one in the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. They're all over the place. More than that, there are nightclubs, movie theaters, a bowling alley, and much more. All behind doors right into the whimsical facades you pass by without a second look. Club 22 is one of the such hidden areas. You might have the cash to join the exclusive club. You don't. Then you have to access it too. It's much more. Club 22 is a place where anything goes. DizzyCo call these places dark zones. Spots where the squeaky clean vestige of Mickey Mouse gives away to drinking, drugs, and, of course, sex. Conversely, the rest of the park is a bright zone with a few gray zone. All of those between. As far as the janitor has said, it wasn't always that way. It was more of a slow decline and the gradual relaxation of social norms within that elite group. The reason he know all of this, and you may have already guessed, he cleaned it. After a lengthy background check and a non-disclosure forms, janitor moves up from the park, attended to one of the dark zone cleaning crew. Now, before you get some sadistic human sacrifice version in your head, the janitor saw nothing of the sorts. A lot of the empty alcohol bottles. Yes, used condoms scatter like deflated New Year's balloons. Oh yeah, he cleaned up his share of blood, piss, and vomit, but it was all down to the unrestricted behavior of patrons as opposed to any source of cult behavior. At least, that's how he sees it in retrospect. All the trash, that profane shit, went into furnace and mangled with a smoke of quaint cottage chimney. If you've been in Disney World, you breathe ultra constant sin. Breaking up this information was Hammer. Hammer mailed me the old-fashioned way, though I don't know how he got my house addressed. He sent me photocopies of work papers providing his employment, with the instructions to burn them when I was convinced, in which I was gladly. homework around the Disney World Park, doing demolition and the construction. At one point, he approached to Superior regarding some strange construction plans. There was wide rectangular area marked off with blueprints about the size of a supermarket. The area was left unnamed, and he only bore the words "Do not dig." Not only his superior in the dark, but he was super fucking purposefully in the dark. He didn't want to talk about it. Didn't want to know about it, and ending the conversation with this: space intentionally left blank. Hammer didn't get it. The area seemed a waste of space. It was directly conflicting with the work his team had been given. He started poking around the area on his off time, finding only a derelict steel door with a great span of concrete just beyond. It was a supermarket worth a blank gray floor. Soon after, Hammer started picking gas cots out of the crowds. Unlike all other reports, the thing would stand in a full view of a guy. They clustered together in the distance. They just be pressed against the wall when he turned a corner. He said they moved weird, looked like they were weak or injured, like a deer that has been running down by a hunter and can't flee anymore. Just like in the movie Bambi. The gas mask the Disney character faces with filters jammed in. He noticed that they seem wet on the inside, like a condition on a car window. The tiny breads of water and glimmered behind the glass, making it impossible for any of them to actually see. Probing further, Hammerstein directly questions of anyone or everyone who had been working in the park for a decade or more. He hit a dead end thought outs until he was directed to Ida, an elderly woman who worked in a restaurant on the main street. She has been there since the way back, and through nobody had the balls to ask directly. Anyone knew she had plenty of terrible stories to tell. Hammer asked about the empty spaces and then about the gas mask customers, and at the first he thought he would receive the same non-answers he had gotten so far. She was quiet. Eerily quiet.
Room 0.
She choked out. A single shaking hand placed to her cheek as if she were a little girl fearing a father's punishment. She didn't meet the man's gaze for the entire conversation. Room 0, as it turned out, was yet another hidden room, was just like the apartments and Club 22. However, its sheer size and its spots deep beneath the park, it's set apart from any of the fun dark zones. It was a bomb shelter. Room 0 was built to withstand a massive attack, be it conducted by foreign and domestic enemies. Room 0 was to be stocked with enough ready rations to be feed the entire park's ravaged numbers of patrons at any given moment. In a house, a smaller yet lavish panic room of sorts of a Disney's higher ups. During the Second War, Official Disney gas masks were actually produced for children to wear in the event of the attack. The idea was it would be less scary for kids if Mickey's face was emblazoned on a wartime safety device. Yes, I know the obvious problems with that. During the Cold War scare of the 60s, when Disney World was constructed, Room Zero was stocked with similar masks as well. Whether they care about the fear of children or just callous branding, the things found their way down there. What more? Some genius decided that kids would then be frightened by the gas mask their parents were. And so all masks, adult and child, were completely complied to this insane standard. I'd describe it as treating a wound with lemon juice. None of this explained when Hammer would be seen, though not only the seemingly supernatural appearance of the empty out room as well. I've been in there, he explained. There's nothing but a cement floor and four walls. No, you've been on top of it. Someone was, or something, sounded the alarm one day when the park was at fully capacity. The warning was clear. It was supposedly an air attack. Security urged everyone down into the tremendous shelter. There were only ordered to put on their mask and hunker down for the duration to the assault. Everyone was quiet for about 30 minutes, save for crying children and the frightened whimpers. No one wanted to die, and so they were thankful in a way of this strange measure of safety. Then the first scream rang out. Hey, quit pushing! Quit pinching! Waves of shrieking yelp ripped through the crowd from one wall to the other, back and forth. Who was running around? Settle down! Who's laughing? This isn't funny. Ow! Who stepped on my foot? Despite security guards urging to calm down and keep their cool, the crowds become more and more elated until finally, after nearly an hour of madness, the light flickered and died. What followed could only be described as utter chaos. In the dark, only the wails of the young and anguished cries of adults could be heard in a massive swelling din that flooded the ears of all within the black echo chamber. A group of staff members and a select few patrons made it out of the door, ready to face the war above rather than the insanity below. What they found, of course, was a desolate, yet untouched theme park. Music continued to play, echoing through silent storybook towns. Upon returning to Room Zero, the few who stood at the top of a steel staircase that led down into the pitch blackness and heard no sign of a previous fray. There was only silence. Ida herself descended that staircase despite the begging of those left above. She reached the rainforest doors herself, now awash in darkness and hearing only the buzzing in her ears. A single voice come out of the darkness, and Echo made it impossible to tell whether the mocking, raspy voice was at the back of the bomb shelter or if it was right in front of her face. Shut the door, dear. You're letting out of the cold. Gripped by terror, she did just that. Within days, the entire thing, shelter, staircase, all of it was covered with feet upon feet of cement. Air systems and generators above its ceiling were removed, created by a large empty space. They were all down there. Down there with whoever that was. You might notice I've used Ida's name. Unfortunately, she passed away soon after telling her story. Accidental fell, supposedly after getting out of the bed and turned on a light. Such a company devotee. The paper reported that her entire bedroom was covered with Mickey statuettes.